Mesa, Arizona is located outside of Phoenix. Most people don't grow their own food, and most did not even think it was possible. Dennis McClung and his wife made a 5-year plan in 2007 to be as self-sufficient as possible. In 2009, Dennis and his family had just moved into their first house in Mesa, Arizona. This house came with an old, empty, rundown pool. Dennis was unsure about what to do with it other than he wanted to be as self-sufficient as possible. One night, Dennis created a blueprint and showed it to his wife, and 2 days later, they started to build the garden pool. The garden pool is an aquaponics greenhouse, which McClung says in December 2012 is a sustainable symbiotic system. The fish waste in the water is pumped up to the plants using a solar power pump, and then gravity conserves energy by pushing all the water back into the pool where the fish are. It provides the McClung family with fresh fish and fresh vegetables every day. In addition, the family has added chickens and goats to the system. So today, I will first dig into the background and history of this project. Next, plant the seeds of applications, and finally, harvest some benefits and drawbacks that Matt Labaniser, who is an aquaponics farmer, says is a very important part of the solution to our planet's impending food shortages. First, let's start with the history of aquaponics and where it all began. Aquaponics is a combination of aquaculture and hydroponics. Aquaculture, according to the National Marine Fisheries Service in March 2013, refers to breeding, rearing, and harvesting of aquatic plants and animals in all types of water environments, including ponds, rivers, lakes, and the ocean. This is pretty simply just fish farming, which is very common worldwide. According to the organization Hydrospecialists, the word hydroponic comes from the Latin and means working water. Simply put, it is the art of growing plants without soil. Hydroponics is relatively common today, and in hydroponics, the grower constantly adds nutrients to the water. Now that we understand where aquaponics stems from, let's talk about aquaponics. The aquaponics garden team based in North Carolina states that long before the term aquaponics was coined, the Aztec Indians raised plants on rafts on the surface of lakes in approximately 1000 AD. What the Aztecs did was not exactly what aquaponics looks like today. In fact, it was more in its natural state. The Aztecs built tunapas, and according to the World Press, tunapas are pretty much floating gardens constructed out of reeds and rushes that are found near the lake. They put soil or mud atop the rafts and planted their crops. The roots then grow into and submerge themselves in the water. In more modern times, aquaponics came about by fish farmers who were trying to be less dependent on land and much more self-sufficient. Fish farmers could grow fish in a smaller area of water but had much more waste water to deal with on a daily basis. Then it was realized that plants could act as a natural filter, which cleaned the water of the waste and also conserved water and power. Nelson and Pave, who own an aquaponics business, claims as research continued, terrestrial plants were tested and proven to be an effective means of water purification for aquaculture, and this nutrient-rich water a nearly ideal hydroponic solution for growing plants. The odd thing is that even though hydroponics and aquaculture have been in existence since the ancient times, the combination of the two have only been around recently. Today, aquaponics is at the beginning stage of being considered as an alternative to our current food production methods. Now that we have talked about the history of aquaponics, let's talk about the applications of it. The application of aquaponics is very versatile. It can be as big or as small as the owner would like. As you can see in this schematic of the basic aquaponics system, the pump, using an energy source, brings the water up into the media-filled bed where the plants use the fish waste as nutrients and then clean and purify the water. Then the water is flushed back down into the fish tank, where the purified water is aerating the fish tank for the fish. Dennis McClung and his family have an aquaponics system that they call the garden pool because that is exactly what it is. They turned their old rundown pool into an aquaponics system. Aquaponics can be used inside or outside. There is a system that was created by the founders of Back to Roots, and the system only is the size of a 1-gallon fish tank. The McClung family has also coined a term called shelfponics, where they literally made an aquaponics system with a 5-gallon fish tank and a bookshelf. Aquaponics is being used all over the world in many different shapes and sizes. Universities all over the world are beginning to build aquaponics systems on their campuses. An aquaponics system can provide research for students as well as food for dining halls, says a student at Loyola University of Chicago. There are 3 different types of aquaponics systems: the media-filled bed, the nutrient film technique, and the deep water culture technique. According to Aquaponics for Beginners, media-filled bed system uses grow beds with a sustainable medium, expanding clay balls, and gravel being the most common. Water from the fish tank is pumped into the grow beds where plants are grown in the media. This type of grow bed is the most common type for backyard systems and is the one I showed you earlier. It is probably also the most versatile in size. There are two basic kinds of media-filled beds. There are those that are constantly flooded, and then there are those that have a flooding drain system. The other two are much less common. The nutrient film technique involves plants growing in small plastic pots that sit in enclosed plastic gutters. The water from the fish tank is pumped into these gutters in a thin film, states Aquaponics for Beginners. The drawbacks from this type of system is that it can only grow light leafy vegetables because the small pots cannot support heavy plants. The last type of system is deep water culture, where the plants are grown on floating foam rafts with their roots hanging down in the water. This method can cause waterlogging in fruits because they are constantly being submerged. This is much like how the Aztecs practiced their aquaponics technique. Aquaponic farmers states that the flood and drain media-based system is the simplest and most reliable of the different types of aquaponic systems, as well as being very low maintenance. These factors make it the best choice for a home aquaponic system, especially beginners. People are literally building systems in their homes in as big or as small as they'd like. Aquaponic systems are being built in people's bathrooms, basements, rooftops, and backyards. So we have talked about how aquaponic systems are built today. Now to go over what kind of impacts this method will have on agriculture as we know it today, what kind of impacts it will have on families and society as a whole, and as with everything, there are advantages and disadvantages of this idea. Aquaponics can have a relatively expensive startup cost. The initial cost and time put into the project is going to be high. Garden Pool states that since there are so many different ways to build an aquaponic system, research on it is unreliable. Also, since this type of agriculture is almost a self-sustaining system, if one thing goes wrong, like a pipe blockage or a pump failure, the whole system could be compromised. The most difficult part of the system is the initial setup. After that, it is easy peasy lemon squeezy. So, what are the advantages of aquaponics? Initially, this system may be one solution to problems arising in regards to food deserts, which are places where fresh produce is not available, but fast food and unhealthy options are readily available. Michelle Obama says in February 2010, "I have a goal of getting rid of food deserts in 7 years, tackling the issue of accessibility and affordability." Well, growing plants without soil is an amazing idea because then you can grow plants on rooftops and basements in your house and in your kitchen with ease. Moreover, these systems incorporate multiple sources of nutrition and revolutionize the way we utilize gardening. These systems draw upon an idea that emphasizes its idealness and sustainability. Furthermore, as noted, Alan Wilson, who's a professor at the University of Chicago, says aquaponics makes growing your own food practical for just about anyone. Not everyone has a plot of fertile soil to grow a garden, but with the aquaponics, you don't need that. Aquaponics are very versatile, which means they can be created and shaped to fit anyone's needs. It can be as big or as small, as diverse or as sparse as needed. This ability to control choices may reframe how we approach and manage our diets. Having people grow their own food not only lets people know exactly where their food is coming from, but also cuts down on the environmental impact of conventional farming today. The agriculture industry delivers food every day to supermarkets. We can definitely cut down the carbon footprint by growing our own food at home instead of creating a demand for it to be driven across the country. The future of aquaponics is uncertain because of the initial work and investment of starting a system. However, the potential savings and sustainability of this idea is undeniable. If the McClung family can do it, so can you. Aquaponics is truly an agricultural revolution.